A man once jumped from a commercial airplane at 10,000 feet into a storm, with $200,000 strapped to his body, and he was never seen again. He called himself Dan Cooper. The press would later rename him D.B. Cooper. To this day, no one knows who he really was. On the night before Thanksgiving in 1971, he boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He wore a dark business suit, a white shirt, and a narrow black tie secured with a simple clip. He paid cash for a one-way ticket. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He did not raise his voice. Midway through the short flight, he handed a folded note to a flight attendant. At first she thought it was a phone number. He leaned closer and told her she should read it. The note said he had a bomb in his briefcase. He opened the case just enough for her to see red cylinders and wires. He did not panic. He did not rush. He calmly dictated his terms. $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes waiting in Seattle. When the plane landed, the airline complied. The money was delivered. The parachutes were brought on board. All 36 passengers were released unharmed onto the runway. Only then did the real mystery begin. Cooper instructed the remaining crew to take off again and fly south at low altitude, slow speed, with the landing gear partially deployed. Somewhere over the dark forests of southwest Washington, he lowered the rear staircase of the Boeing 727. What happened in the next 20 minutes has never been fully explained. After the passengers were released in Seattle, only 4 crew members remained on board with him. The pilots, a flight engineer, and flight attendant Tina Mucklow, who would become the last person known to see him alive. The plane took off again at 7:40 p.m. It was raining. Winds were strong. The aircraft climbed to 10,000 feet and turned south toward Reno, as instructed. Cooper sat in the rear cabin, alone with the money and the parachutes. He asked Mucklow to show him how to operate the rear staircase. She demonstrated. He thanked her, then told her to return to the cockpit and close the door. She later said he did not seem nervous. He seemed focused. At approximately 8 p.m., the crew felt a sudden upward movement in the tail of the aircraft, what pilots later described as a pressure bump. The cockpit indicators showed the rear staircase had been deployed mid-flight. They did not see him jump. No one did. The plane continued south. It landed in Reno just after 10 p.m., where armed FBI agents surrounded it on the runway. The rear stairs were down. The cabin was empty. Cooper was gone. Inside the aircraft, investigators recovered his black clip-on tie, a tie clasp, and 8 cigarette butts. The bomb he had shown the flight attendant was gone. So was the money. Search teams combed the dense forests of southwest Washington for weeks. Helicopters scanned the trees. Soldiers moved in lines across muddy ground. Nothing was found. He was 45 years old, according to estimates. He had brown eyes. He spoke calmly. That is almost all that is known. But 9 years later, a discovery on a riverbank would reopen the question of whether he ever survived that fall. In February 1980, a young boy digging a fire pit along the Columbia River uncovered 3 bundles of cash, fused together by decay. The serial numbers matched the ransom money given to Cooper. The total was $5,800. It was the only confirmed trace of the $200,000 ever recovered. The location complicated everything. The money was found on Tenna Bar, miles from the projected drop zone calculated by the FBI. Some investigators believed the bundles had washed downstream over time. Others argued the river's flow patterns did not support that theory. The bills were buried in sand, not scattered by current. How did a portion of the ransom reach that beach, while the rest of it never surfaced anywhere on Earth? That question has never been answered. In the decades that followed, the FBI examined more than 1,000 suspects. Former soldiers, paratroopers, engineers, men who resembled the composite sketch. None could be conclusively tied to the crime. One theory holds that Cooper never survived the jump. The weather was severe. He wore a business suit and loafers, not survival gear. The terrain below was forest and river. If he landed badly, his body may never have been found. Another theory suggests he knew exactly what he was doing. He requested 4 parachutes, possibly to imply he would take a hostage and prevent authorities from sabotaging the equipment. He chose a Boeing 727, one of the few commercial aircraft with a rear staircase that could be lowered mid-flight. That detail alone suggests planning. In 2025 and 2026, newly reviewed evidence focused attention on the black tie he left behind. Microscopic analysis revealed thousands of metallic particles, including rare titanium alloys used in aerospace manufacturing during the 1960s and 1970s. Investigators believed, though never confirmed, that Cooper may have worked in or around that industry. He left behind a tie, a few cigarette filters, and a name that was not his own. In 2016, after 45 years, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case. It remains the only unsolved act of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation. And there is still one possibility no file can eliminate: that he landed, walked out of the forest, and lived the rest of his life unnoticed. Some crimes end in a courtroom. Some end in a grave. This one ended in open sky. For the crew of Flight 305, it was not a legend. It was a night of controlled fear inside a metal cabin at 10,000 feet. They went home. They aged. They carried the memory of a man who spoke softly and stepped backward into darkness. The case changed aviation. Aircraft were modified so rear staircases could no longer be lowered in flight. Security procedures tightened. Cash payments for one-way tickets drew attention. An entire system adjusted itself around a man who left no name behind. And still, the central question remains. Did he die in the forest that night, or did he succeed? For the families of those who searched, for the agents who spent years chasing fragments of metal and sand, this was not folklore. It was unfinished work. If you have a theory about how he survived, or why he may not have, leave it below. I read every single one. If you want to keep going deeper into cases the world never fully solved, subscribe. There are more stories here that still live in the margins of official history. He bought a ticket under a false name, opened a door in the sky, and turned himself into a question no one has been able to close.